Aloha and welcome back to Hub Talks. My name is Shanah Trevenna and I'm here with George Yarbrough. We are the co-hosts of this show and we're also the directors of Proto Hub Honolulu, which I'm going to let George talk to you about a little bit.
Welcome back to the show. I think this is our third show for Hub Talks. All right. 3 is a good number, right?
It's a magic number.
Right on, right on. Okay, so we have a really busy week. We have some guests, but before we get there, let's talk about what's happening at the Hub.
Sure.
Okay, so big event coming March 10th down the road. We have Resilience is the New Sustainability. It's a new book launch of our friend, Michael Kramer. And it's also sponsored by Kona Brewing and Whole Foods. And it's $10. And what's going to be the topic of conversation?
I'm really passionate about this because it's the book is called Resilient Investing. So it's about investing your time and energy and money for your own sustainability, your own fulfillment, and also for the sustainability of Hawaii and for the larger global economy. So we have 5 amazing panelists. We have Shanah Farnsworth from Blue Startups and the Hawaii Angels Network. We have State Representative Chris Lee, who's introduced bills on divesting investment from oil here in Hawaii. We have some people from permaculture and from other areas of resiliency in Hawaii. So it's going to be a great discussion and panel. We have some great food from Whole Foods, Kona beer. I love my longboard.
Again, March 10th from 5:30 to 8. That's going to happen at the Hub. But you're not as passionate as Naomi Klein or for Naomi Klein, which is happening when?
He's got me this Thursday, February 26th at the University of Hawaii. My favorite author and hero, Naomi Klein. She's written a book called Capitalism versus the Climate, which I'm studying deeply for my PhD. She's going to be speaking at a public lecture at UH at 6 p.m. And just before that, in room 203E in the campus center cafeteria, we're having a reception with about 60 people to discuss Naomi Klein's, briefly talk about her book, and then go up and watch her in person live and get to meet this incredible woman who's, I think, changing the face of how we look at our future in terms of economy and society and the environment. So that's this Thursday at UH, and yeah, I'm stoked. That might be, I'm super excited.
Yeah, but I'm going to set you up once again.
Okay.
Because
Keep
on Thursday, we're actually, for the HVCA, which is the Hawaii Venture Capital Association, Shanah Trevenna has been nominated as one of the finalists for the Social Entrepreneur of the Year.
Thanks, George. Thank you. So sweet.
So that's also happening in Kaka'ako, and it's on February 26th, this Thursday, and so you have to go.
Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to see the actual lecture.
So you're gonna miss Naomi Klein, but you're gonna go. I hope you win.
Thank
but
you.
You're up against some pretty big people here.
Against friends.
Against friends.
I mean, when you're working in the impact, space, the social impact, you're going to be against friends. So there are only winners that night.
I know.
Only winners.
Well, we'll see who the real winner is. Okay, but then in addition to that, we have Organic Food Cart, which is tomorrow, Wednesday, from 12 to 1:30 at the Hub. And so that's Joe Sardino, who has this really cool 100% organic and compostable food cart that he kind of pushes around Kaka'ako and Ward. And he's coming to the kitchen for the first time tomorrow, again from 12 to 1:30. And you can check him up on Twitter, on Facebook, and stuff like that. It's Organic Food Cart. Tomorrow, again, we have Proaction Cafe, which is a project acceleration tool for people who have a new business or a startup or an idea. It's a really, really cool concept. It's an amazing tool for you to bounce ideas off of the community and get really interesting feedback on people you would never really have the chance or ability to speak to. So if you have an idea on anything, for example, permaculture, a new app, or it could be kitchen, you have a new a kitchen, a sustainable kitchen, and you want to have a new restaurant, a pop-up restaurant. We've had crazy ideas come out there, and really cool ideas come out of it. So Word on the Street, for example, was one of them. Our friend from, I guess, the Energy Accelerator now. So, and then we also have, on that same day, like I said, it was a busy week. On that same day, we have Eco-Literacy Series, Oahu Invasive Species. So a friend, Tom Ekman, is going to be providing a actually it's more of a class, right? Yeah, it's more of a class where he's going to be talking about the Oahu invasive species. And I think it's been about 2 hours. It's free. If you RSVP now, go to the Hub, www.protohubhonolulu.net. Or it's $5 at the door. So very, very busy week. But let's go to our guests.
Yeah, I'll get a chance to introduce everyone. We're really excited about today's show because, as you hopefully know by now, the Proto Hub is a center for small business. It's a co-working space. You can see it behind us. And we have 150 members and a few hundred guests every week that come in to use the space for co-working, for meetings, for events, for workshops. And so it's a real supportive center for entrepreneurs and small business. And today, the theme of the show is state support for small business in Hawaii. So there's a lot of programs and different avenues that a lot of us aren't aware of, even if we're really in the center of the space. So we wanted to have our friends from DBED, Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism, but specifically the Business Development and Support Division. And so we have with us, we have Mark Ritchie, who's the branch chief. So Mark, welcome. Thanks for being with us.
That's my pleasure.
Yeah, and Jamie Lum, who's an Economic Development Specialist. Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, and so we were all just hanging out at the Small Business Fair at Leeward Community College this past Saturday. I got to speak about incubators and accelerators, and we had a booth up for the Proto Hub. And we hung out. You came to my session, so thank you for that.
It was a great session. Great session and really valuable information, too.
Thank you. It was fun to put it together. And there was, I mean, can you even tell us how many sessions there were?
There's about 30 classes or 30 sessions.
Wow.
Yeah, and they run on sort of 3 tracks, so you can take like 3 of those. So you can come back to the next one.
Is this something that you guys do on a continuing basis? Do you have another one
twice
coming
a
up?
year. Yeah, the next one will be at Honolulu Community College in the fall. It will probably be sometime in August or September.
Okay.
Yeah, and it's the thing that blew me away. Well, there's a few things that blew me away. First of all, just the diversity of the programs you could go to.
Yeah.
So there was how to start a food truck, how to start a food business. There was, you know, tax planning, bookkeeping, some basics like that, and then just different areas of actual different industries, but then also all the basics of what you need to know to start
Right,
business.
business planning and things.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you could get one-on-one consulting.
That's right from SCORE, our friends at SCORE. So we partner with a lot of organizations. It's not only DBED, but Small Business Development Center, it's Leeward Community College, and a lot of other organizations, DCCA, Business Action Center, and it's really aimed at about half the people who show up are people thinking about starting a company. The other half are people that have small companies and they're looking to kind of get to the next level.
Yeah.
So it's all free, and
that's the other part that blew me away. Yeah, that it's absolutely free blew me away.
Yeah. And also your presentation was great because I think you know accelerators, incubators can really fit into this sort of business growth model, and I think there were a lot of people very interested in looking at that as an alternative shared workspace, all of that kind of thing, and when they're starting out.
New concept that's like people don't really understand it, and you know, like sometimes people will say that Hawaii is a little bit, you know, maybe a step or two behind, and kind of like these new workspace and especially these concepts. So it's kind of nice to have that focus.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I think Hawaii's catching up.
Yeah. No. Definitely.
Well, actually, that just leads into my first question. I'm really curious, and both of you can answer this, but sort of about the history of DBED. I think, Jamie, you've been there, you know, quite a few years, so I would love to know. Yeah.
I've been there for a while, yes.
Yeah.
DBED has been around for a long time, and it actually went through several iterations from Department of Planning and Economic Development to just Department of Business and Economic Development. And I believe in the early 90s they added in the tourism because there was a big push from the tourism industry for that emphasis. But the department has always been focused on, we're the leading state agency for economic development, so policy and programs that help identify appropriate industries, strengths for our state that will help us, you know, get good jobs for our residents and basically help, you know, grow Hawaii's economy. So the, you know, the basic premise of and purpose of the department has never changed. And so as has already been mentioned, in our particular division, we do work with small businesses, so that part of it. And as you know, it's a large part of our economy, so.
Yes. Is that what your division, how would you define your division within the larger umbrella of DBED, Department of Business, Economic Development and Tourism? What is the Business Development and Support Division? It's just pretty straightforward, but is it only small business?
Not only, but because, you know, tourism has its own, HTA handles that. We have our energy office, so they handle all the energy sector. We kind of handle, we've talked about this, kind of handle a lot of all the in-between, or everything else, you could say.
A lot of sort of the product focus kind of things. We have partnered with HTDC, the High Technology Development Corporation, on bio, in fact, this sort of life science thing we're going into. Also, I think our division, you know, we have sort of a community-based kind of economic development, program, and then also do a lot of the marketing and stuff, particularly like export related. We're trying to grow small companies and try to help them get to the next level, I guess, if you could kind of summarize that. And then make it, try to help distressed communities and things grow jobs and create economic development in those types of areas as well.
And Mark, you actually have a background in small business or business before you came into DBED. Can you tell us a bit about, just tell us a story about you, like your history of your interest in this and kind of how you ended up being here?
I don't think anybody's career is really linear, but so maybe sort of just going back chronologically, I mean, before joining DBED a year ago, I was at a startup company, life science company in Manoa, Kunli Agri-Systems, an algae company. I was there for 3 or 4 years. And basically, it was a company that was solely grants focused, and I was kind of responsible for bringing more commercial business to the company and helping them sort of transition. And so that was good. And then I also worked at Enterprise Honolulu for a couple of years, where I worked one-on-one on businesses with businesses.
Was our friend Pono?
Yes, actually right before.
There was pre-Pono?
Yeah, there was a pre, that was pre. And then before that on the mainland, I worked at a large Silicon Valley company, Silicon Graphics. I was a product manager there. You learn all sorts of stuff there. And I think you have a Silicon Valley connection too, don't you?
I do, yeah. I was a mechanical engineer at IBM, and my first program that I worked on was Silicon Graphics. And those are the first sort of professional engineers I connected with in the late 90s,
I think it was great being a product manager in a large sort of corporate environment, because there's so many resources available to get good training, methodology, how you do those sorts of things. And it can be very helpful if you go off to a startup to then sort of take some of that knowledge and things. I think it's great when people sort of start out right at a startup, but having that training and knowledge is very helpful.
I agree. I definitely took that path. And I've interviewed, so back to my geeky dissertation, which I'm very immersed in right now for my PhD, but I've interviewed 60 sustainable business leaders from across the country. And most of them started off in a very mainstream company, learned the ropes of the mainstream way of doing things, and then we're like, how can I create a company that has a social and environmental impact doing that thing? So one person was a high exec of Xerox, and then created his own paper company that gave all the profits to the communities, and the people that bought the paper products voted on which organizations got the profits in their own community, and all the products were recycled paper and green products, etc. So anyways, that whole trajectory is very, I think, a strong one, and not a necessary one. I've also interviewed people that at 21 raised $13 million and started their first company.
Yes, no, definitely. And then sort of the last bit, I worked at the Canadian Consulate and Trade Office in San Francisco and Silicon Valley, and then also in New York for the Quebec government for a while, so I have a Canadian connection.
I always light up when there's a Canadian connection.
But it was working with technology-based Canadian companies entering the U.S. market, and so we did programmatic things, but also did one-on-one consulting and things.
Right, and where I worked was in Toronto. I'm from Canada, so I definitely and that's just in the 90s when Canada was trying to branch out to other countries.
Yeah, Canada is really a leader in a lot. I mean, Waterloo, Microsoft, and things. There's a lot of good BlackBerry. A lot of good Canadian technology companies.
We could talk about Canada all day long.
Vancouver now is like, there's like the new hub for app development. My brother just came out of there, and so it's kind of like the Seattle, or not Seattle, but the San Francisco of the north now.
There's a very thin border between Seattle and Vancouver in a lot of ways. Great. Okay. Okay. So
what makes a small business then? I'm curious. So you keep saying small business, but what's the definition of your small business?
It's interesting. You could do sort of an employee kind of thing, which the federal government does. It says 500, but for Hawaii, that's, I think, way too high. I think maybe a way to define small business is just some of the challenges they're having. I mean, they're actually trying to overcome certain hurdles to kind of get to the next level, and there's a lot of sort of similarity in those hurdles. And so we talked about sort of business services and the types of things going on at the small business fair. Those were definitely, people already had business, those were definitely small businesses. But at some point, probably the state might want to try to have an actual employee definition, which we don't now. We'd have to use the federal government definition.
So the number 500 comes from the federal.
That's right.
500 employees or less.
Or less, and you have to use that for a lot of federal programs. And so you're eligible for those federal programs if you have 499 employees, which in Hawaii, that's a big company.
So how many companies in Hawaii would fall in that category, do you think?
Oh, I think, you mean over 500? Or less?
Under.
90%, I'm sure. Probably 90%.
I'm trying to remember some of the statistics you sent us that small businesses, 96% of all businesses in Hawaii employ 54% to the private sector labor force, and are, I think, less than 20 people. It was something like that. It was really small.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just in terms of, you know, the number of small businesses, you basically or people that work in small businesses, about 250,000 people in Hawaii residents work in small businesses.
Wow.
So that's a big chunk. It's kind of the third leg of the economy, you know, with tourism and the military being the other two legs.
Yeah.
I love this. Okay, so I'm going to leave us with this idea as we go off to a commercial break, but that we always hear about military and tourism being the two strong legs of the economy, but what about a third that's small business with a quarter of, 250 million people employed?
A quarter of a million, yeah.
And 54% of the private sector labor force being part of small business. So we're here with Mark Ritchie and Jamie Lum, who are from the State Business Development and Support Division from DBED. And as soon as we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about exporting and all sorts of different programs for economically suppressed neighborhoods, et cetera. So here's where we're going to find out if you have a certain type of business, what programs are out there for you. So come back to Hub Talks. Thanks.
We're here with Hunter Haviland because he is a member of our panel on February 26th. We're going to talk about Hawaii, the state of unfunded liabilities. Hi, Hunter.
Hi, Jay.
So what does it look like from your point of view, being on that panel?
Well, part of my work is with the Asia Pacific Center for Regenerative Design. And so with that, we're kind of taking a broader notion of when we talk about liabilities, what are some of the external factors, right? So if we're talking about sustainability across the globe, resilience to natural disasters, our use of natural resources, and how those things do or don't get incorporated into our current understandings of the state of the state.
Yeah, and thus the liabilities and thus the economy. Yeah. So that's February 26th. It's a Thursday. It's at Laniakea. It starts at 12 noon. Come down 11:30 for lunch. Check out our website to sign up, thinktechhawaii.com. Hunter is one of 7 speakers. We'll be trying to talk to some of the others too, let you know what they're going to do. And sign up. We'll see you there. It'll be important. It's one of the most important things we can think of. Aloha.
Aloha.
Aloha, and welcome back to Hub.
Hi, my name is Andrew Howe.
With Jamie Lum and Mark Ritchie, who are from the Business Development and Support Division of our state. And we're talking about state support for small business in Hawaii. And we're learning so much. We're learning that most of Hawaii's small business or businesses are small businesses. And we're going to talk with Jamie a little bit and tell us about you. Tell us about how you came into the State Department and why you like supporting small business.
I'm actually kind of a career bureaucrat, you could say. Yeah. I've been working with the department for a while. I actually came in through the tourism side. Okay. But for the last 12 years, going on 13 years, I've been working with the Business Development and Support Division. And what I liked actually was, you know, when you work in the tourism side, especially on the government side, you're very focused in that. I mean, you're just immersed in it. And I didn't have a chance really to see what else was going on in the state until I came to this division and saw all the other small industries and, you know, small businesses that are out there and growing. And so that was exciting for me, and that's what, you know, brought me to the division. I just like helping people. So.
In those years, what sort of trends have you seen for exporting for Hawaii? And is like exporting something that that you guys are looking at really supporting and pushing down the line, or what's kind of?
It's actually just getting businesses to think about exporting. For some businesses, neighbor island companies, that might be selling to Oahu. Okay. For, you know, and then for companies here, just selling to the mainland is a big thing. For a while, we were focused on international. We are still focused on that, but that's because we had some federal dollars, which we needed to focus on international markets. But it's really getting companies to think of exporting as a way to grow their company. 95% of the world's consumers are outside of the U.S. And so to, you know, expose companies to that and get them to see, you know, if you're only selling to Hawaii or only selling to the U.S., there's really a lot more potential. Of course, for Hawaii companies, there's a little bit of, in terms of capacity, and that's why we have to kind of look at more specialty products and specialty markets.
Like indigenous soap, my dear friend Love Chance. She makes that amazing soap, which is the only soap my husband will ever let us use. And she started exporting to Japan. And
that's actually the question now. So have you, I know this is kind of a specific question for you, but what sort of percentage of Hawaii's exports goes to overseas, to Southeast Asia, to Asia, versus to the mainland?
I don't know that exactly. It's much smaller, I'm sure, than what goes to the U.S. But Japan is our largest market in terms of where our goods and services are getting exported to. So, you know, there's just that natural connection.
For sure.
So it kind of starts with that. A lot of it is more of a, you know, personal connection, or with Japanese visitors coming here and liking Hawaii products and so forth, and liking Hawaii, and so when they go back, you know, they are looking for these kinds of things that they've found.
It's a little bit of a difficult data question, because we're calling it exporting if we kind of ship to California, but the U.S. government doesn't compile statistics that way, so they'll pick up if something goes to Japan or China or Canada, but not just to California.
Oh, interesting. It's only international, because it's
It's
still
only
within the
international.
US.
That's
Oh,
right.
that's so
It's in
interesting.
the US.
No, that makes a lot of
but
sense.
we still think that there are hurdles to overcome to actually get your product on the mainland, find distributors, that kind of thing.
I hear, so here's another statistic that we have: 900 companies exported goods from the state in 2012, and about 85% were small firms, and that's just about half of the state's total known export value. So given that small business is such a big part of export, what's the programs are available? What's the state support for that?
Right. So we've been taking kind of a multi-pronged approach, trying to, first of all, expose companies to the whole idea of exporting, so doing seminars and workshops, working with our partners like SBA, the Small Business Administration, like the Small Business Development Center, our own foreign trade zone, which is part of DBED.
What does that mean?
It's actually a foreign trade zone.
Yes.
They are designated as basically a tax-free zone for people that are bringing in foreign goods. It gives them certain tax benefits until those goods actually leave that area. So they can, it just helps companies with cash flow. They can put off paying duty. For instance, if somebody's manufacturing a product that they need to bring in some things from Korea, and they can, until they actually use those things to manufacture their product, they can leave it in the zone and not pay duty on it until such time that they need it.
And no duty if they re-export it.
Right.
So if you bring in all the inputs from overseas, you manufacture it in the zone, and then you re-export it, then there's no duty paid.
That's huge.
So it's a,
Is that common, or is that just Hawaii?
They have it all over the
throughout
U.S.
the
There's
US.
foreign trade zones all over the U.S.
So what's the difference between that and an enterprise zone?
Enterprise zones are, it's a state-county partnership where economically sort of disadvantaged areas, kind of based on census data, just done every 10 years, can be designated an enterprise zone. And companies can set up in an enterprise zone, and in exchange for tax incentives, which is like a GET waiver and then a tax credit, they create jobs and agree to a certain number of jobs over 7 years. And we run that program in our division, and it's very much of a sort of a job creation program for economically disadvantaged areas.
And I think Kaka'ako is one of these areas.
Kaka'ako is.
Not for long, maybe?
Well, what's interesting is that it's every 10 years there's a census report. So in 2020 there'll be another census report, and we'll see what happens. But I have a feeling that Kaka'ako might be too wealthy, or have too many median income there might be a little bit too high. To,
get it while the game's big.
So
exactly. So if you're looking at it now, look before 2020.
But that's a success too.
Yes.
I mean, so we're
that's the whole idea of it.
That's the whole
sort
idea.
of raise the.
State support comes in until something matures and can stand on its own, and then it pulls out. So
Exactly.
The role of government is a whole other show. Fascinating. Okay, and then in terms of other areas, like there's fashion, there's other niches that you support. Can you talk about that?
Well, so what we've done is, so we provide training. We currently have this business of exporting program going. With the Hawaii Pacific Export Council, and actually it's a little deeper than just ABCs of exporting. This is what you need to know. These are the kinds of issues you're going to face. It's actually looking at your business to see, are you really tooled up for exporting? So
it's like consulting?
It actually is. I mean, we put a dollar value on it, and it's an 8-month program. It started back in October. It's going to end in May.
Sounds like an incubator.
And with it is actually we kind of looked at it as an exporting accelerator model.
So the state took a look at what private sector is doing in terms of incubators and said, hey, let's do that too.
Right, and focus on people that are looking at exporting. So it does kind of run the gamut. Companies applied for it, they were selected. The Export Council is running it, and they've been getting mentors. So they have these large group sessions, so they focus on these large issues, but in between, they're meeting one-on-one with people from the council, and these are people that have had years and years of international trade experience. Wow. And really focusing in on what it is in your particular company that you want to solve or do or whatever. So we're very proud of that, and the company so far, the feedback we've been getting is very good.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So one of the things that accelerators are really do, if you look at through startups and stuff, is that they also provide the network. So when you have this accelerator for exporting here in Hawaii, do you also provide the networks of buyers in internationally, or even like on the west, or even on the
Well,
the mainland?
what we've been doing is we've been targeting certain industries and certain trade shows. So basically, where we feel Hawaii could have an advantage. So, for instance, our fashion industry, which was sort of latent for a while in terms of getting state support, certainly. But there's been a resurgence, and we've gone to the fashion fair in Japan and tried to get them to be able to find distributors and buyers there. We've gone to the Tokyo International Gift Show. Bio, as we said, is coming up in June, the biotech show. So we also are working with companies in that area. This year is in Philadelphia. And the gift show we're going to in September, so we're recruiting companies. But basically,
how many companies are in the gift show? It's almost 40.
Last year, 55 went. So we have a number of companies.
And what about expos bringing them here? Do we provide any expos, like any attraction to bring that other potential buyers?
Actually, we haven't done any of those reverse type missions in a while, but
More expensive.
we could have opportunity. We work a lot with the U.S. Department of Commerce, because they have their commercial service offices all over the world, and that's actually kind of a network we use to help our companies. We steer them to those offices because they have resources there that can help them find companies that they can work with in the market that they want to get into.
I should have warned you that George loves to wiggle into your program plan or your business plan. And I'm always like, watch out for it, it's coming.
We also are working with Meet Hawaii, that's HTA and
the convention
convention center on attracting a big show where there'd be a lot of companies there, and we put a lot of programmatic stuff around that because there'd be people from all over the world coming to Honolulu. So we do that. We do that on sort of an ad hoc basis.
Okay, so if I can just break down this in a summary. So we've been talking about the idea of an accelerator and incubator, and I spoke about this on the weekend. So I feel like it's fair for our audience to frame what that is. It's a program that you enter, and you get three main things usually, which is a very vast network of investors and potential buyers and collaborators and support and mentors. You often get a little bit of funding. I don't think this program provides funding for the companies. Or
They'll subsidize part of the trade show that they
yeah,
go into at the end of it.
There's a little bit of
and it often ends in a demo day where you actually demonstrate your product or your service to those that could potentially invest or partner with you. So that's when we're talking about that. That's what we're speaking of. And you had 8 companies enter your first round. And then you think you're going to do this again for future companies?
We'll take a look at it. We hope to be able to support this type of program.
What was the name of it? Was it the CBED?
Business of exporting.
That's business export. Yeah, CBED is a little bit different.
So, and then in terms of other programs, there's a lot of expos and bringing people together and sort of under different umbrellas of different types of industries and different goals. So how do people that are either thinking about starting a small business or have a small business connect to all of these programs?
We would work. We work with a lot of partners, and since we're the state, we also work very close with the federal government. And for companies just starting out and looking at those sorts of things, usually we refer them to the Business Action Center, which is actually DCCA, which is State Department, and then also the Small Business Development Center, which is federal, and they're part of the SBA group. And they will actually do like one-on-one counseling, business plan review, that type of thing. And then also organizations like SCORE can help as well.
Right, they have the workshops that are in the $30, $40 range. We actually have a lot at the Proto Hub too. We have a lot of programs and workshops on tax and marketing, et cetera. Jamie, is there any other programs you want to mention before we go to commercial break? We're just about there. Right.
In terms of our exporting, that's our basic platform, and we're always looking for new shows to do. We are looking at possibly doing a natural products show next year.
Ooh.
Because that's an area that our
What does natural
companies,
product mean?
It runs the gamut, because it's not just like certified organic, or I mean it's
everything from healthcare to
nutraceuticals,
to
Honey,
Yeah,
coffee,
right?
Just
all the things we love.
Yeah.
Look at the farmers markets.
Magnets.
You go talk to them. They're all. Everyone's like, the next step for me is
Right.
to go export to Japan.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you look at KCC, I mean, like
Right.
it's overwhelmingly Japanese tourists.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's all that the farmers just see the dollar signs because
Right.
their products are flying off the shelf.
Yeah.
From
Yeah.
Japanese tourists.
Yeah.
We're going to continue this conversation right after the commercial break. Obviously, we're all super passionate about small business, the ability to make something special from Hawaii, and the ideas of bringing it to the world. We're here with some people from DBED, and we're going to be talking about small business and the state support for small business when we come right back to Hub Talks. Thanks for staying with us.
Hi, aloha. My name is Chris Leatham, and I host a show called The Economy and You. The show plays every Wednesday at noon, and on my show, I bring on guests who are interested or working in the technology space. And so I'd like you to come and watch the show and learn with me about all the sort of exciting things that we're doing in Hawaii to build and grow our economy ecosystem. So I'd like to say aloha, and I look forward to seeing you on the show. Thank you.
Aloha, my name is Paul Jackson, better known as PJ, and my local interest is in sports. I have my own sports radio show at KWAI AM 1080 that you can stream live. I also have my own website, pjsportsradio.com. We have live guests in studio, and we talk about discussions and topics that everyone wants to know locally here on the islands. We cover everything from surfing to basketball to whatever's going on locally, sports-wise. We try to do our best and cover the topics in depth as much as we can. Once again, thank you for joining PJ here on Hawaii Sports Update. Mahalo.
Hi, my name is Seymour Kazimirski. I have a show called Seymour's World on ThinkTech Hawaii. Our show is about opening minds and facilitating conversations. To tell you the truth, I have no idea what we're going to be talking about. I have no idea who our guests are going to be, but I guarantee you we're going to have lots and lots of fun. Aloha from Seymour's World.
Welcome back to Hub Talks. Right now we are speaking with both Mark Ritchie and Lyle Fujikawa from the Economic Development, actually they're both Economic Development Specialists, Business Development and Support Division. Mark is actually the branch chief, and Lyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks.
Yeah, we're really excited to have you. You're actually a big supporter of the Hub. You're around all the time.
I love you guys. You guys are awesome,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you know, because we find you mentioned Watts, the word on the street, and that's where I met them, and we're kicking it off. So
Yeah.
I see it happening, and I know it's gonna go well. So
Word on the Street is a magazine that is written by homeless, for homeless, and it's an economic ability for them to participate. So I was...
what's the next step for them? Just really quickly, if you want to give
we have to get funding. We're going to crowdfund. We're looking for donors, advertising, and we're getting content together. So and then building our team, and so it's moving ahead. We're really happy. Really
the whole subject of houselessness and homelessness is really
it's
hot, and
it's topical. It's important, and you know, it's just one step to move in the right direction.
Yeah, yeah, we're looking forward to it. Well, thank you for supporting that.
Yeah, a lot of our members are actually working in nonprofits, et cetera, that are working with especially the homeless in Kaka'ako.
Yes.
And we've actually hosted a movie night for the kids.
That was great. Yeah. I
during
think
the holidays.
those kinds of things are really they're so important.
They came by yesterday and said the biggest thing they remember from their visit was the movies and the tree and the bathrooms.
The tree.
Not the movie. Or the presents.
That tree. Yeah, they didn't remember the presents at all.
The presents have like disappeared by now.
Yeah, they probably,
yeah. We need to get them into programming and to starting businesses.
Yeah, well, thank you for doing that work. Yes, exactly, exactly.
Totally.
This actually, so first of all, thank you for all wearing your purple shirts today. They're really in solidarity. That goes to show how connected we all are. Yeah, and so we were going to just have a talk story for the last section of the show, just about what's happening. I love talking with you every time. Actually, both of you guys, when I run into you, we always have nice chats. So I have the stat as well that in 2012 there was over 25,000 loans given for around $100,000 by the Community Reinvestment Act.
Right.
So I want to talk about money a little bit. I want to talk about, like, do these small businesses actually make money? How many of them survive? What support is there for finding financing? Like, that's where it comes down to, right?
I know a little bit about that just because I worked for a bank before. I went to Japan and then I came back. And there is that, just community reinvestment. And that's where banks get into the SBA guarantees, right? They have to support. They have to put money into community programs and whatnot. So
like legally.
They're by law. And then it's also, of course, good PR. It's CRA for them and whatnot. So that is a huge part of what the banks do. And of course, we do work with the banks, and we have the Small Business Fair. They do come out and support the activities. But we're not as in sync, I guess, in the numbers. So it's hard to really measure. But you can see, like, Bank of Hawaii is always number one, with supporting small banks, small businesses, I'm sorry. CPB is there, First Hawaiian. So I think everyone's doing their share. And just by looking at what, the constituents, you can see that. The tracking, I think a lot of it is SBA is going to be really the ones to really track those numbers.
Yes, it tends to be more federal. Although our CBID, our community-based economic development program, we do microloans. So those would be the anywhere from $5,000 like $25,000. So we do have a small loan
Really, this is very interesting. This is a sweet spot we've been talking about, actually. So how does that work?
How do you get accepted?
Pretend that I'm a client that's
Right.
maybe interested.
Well, for the CBID program, you can actually go online to our website and sort of read about it. We don't have a lot of money in the fund right now. We sort of have deployed that with an accelerator, which I can talk about, and some other things that we're doing. But it's really designed loans for companies that we think are going to have like a real economic impact in a certain area. So they tend to be more ag-related. We work with the State Department of Agriculture. We don't have a loan officer at DBED, but they do. So we usually do, like a 50-50 with them. So it's something we're trying to grow, but it's still very small. So your first bet is to go to one of the banks and ask about the SBA.
The credit unions, Hawaii USA
supportive.
Federal Credit Union is one of our founding partners, and they've been incredible to work with. So, and do you think the credit unions, are better than the traditional banks?
I wouldn't say they're better,
Not
but I
about
think
better, but more accessible.
They have some flexibility, right?
Yeah.
They have different rules, and so they, but I think, the startup is there. I think what we really need for Hawaii is the follow-on funding. So when you get to a certain point, and so that's what we're really working on. Besides, you get through the incubator, accelerator, and then it's like, okay, now what, right? So we have to really keep, everyone working together. And I think that's where we work well is we do have a lot of partners. We DBED, working with private as well as public sector. And so trying to bring in partners. If we can't do it, well, we'll try to find somebody to help solve the problem.
And there's a couple really good private sector, or actually nonprofit accelerators worth mentioning. Energy Accelerator, which is and Blue Startups.
Of course,
Are there any others? I mean, I would say the co-working spaces too, Box Jelly and
and of course, Proto Hub. You guys are naturally the startups will come out of that, and we talked about the collisions and the networking is all there. So I think it's a natural progression. We see ourselves as sort of taking like the Small Business Fair as like a funnel, and we put them through training like the business of exporting we talked about, or get them in touch with SCORE, SBA, and then take them to a trade show. We tried Made in Hawaii last year, summer. That was like the first time to the fair. Apparel, food companies, manufacturing companies, and some of them are succeeding. We're going to take them to Tokyo International Gift Show and whatnot. So it's a process, and we need to kind of keep helping them along.
And is it 31% of businesses are women-owned and 57% are minority-owned? Are there programs specifically for those businesses? I actually have a women-owned
I mean,
business.
SBA is really
again, that's
full,
federal.
The Mink Center is at the YWCA, very much focused on women-owned businesses. Minority. I mean, you don't have to be a woman just to be part of that as well, but they're very much focused on women-owned businesses, and I think there seems to be a lot of activity now from the federal side. So it's there.
And Lyle, we haven't even asked you, what is sort of your history that got you into this?
Yeah,
we love learning about our guests.
interesting background. With, like your Mark was saying, it's not linear. I actually worked in Hawaii before I went to Japan for about 14 years. I did the same thing. I worked for the state of Pennsylvania. I was actually helping to export from Pennsylvania into Japan and get investment into Pennsylvania. So I have some background working with the commercial service, understanding how to find distributors and all that kind of programs. And my background is really PR marketing, and so my function a lot at DBED now is taking that knowledge from the experience in Japan, seeing what kind of works, and then putting it into the messaging and making sure that we get to the right audiences and whatnot. So like George was saying about the farmers markets, right? The products are going off the shelves. We definitely want to get the first-time designers, the manufacturers in front of Japanese tourists, if possible, even mainland tourists or European tourists. And so we're trying to find other ways to do that. Our job is really more B2B, right? We're talking about that. I think we're not retailers.
Business to
Right,
business.
right.
Yeah, but we do have to understand what the end user wants, right? And so understanding that the whole
What's the trend right now? You hear conversations happen about the Japanese demand is decreasing where the Chinese demand is increasing.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think we have a long history. I mean, just so much
goodwill,
interaction, goodwill.
Right.
I mean, the ties with Japan.
Yeah.
When you say we, do you mean Hawaii? Or
Hawaii,
yeah.
Hawaii. It could have been Japan, right? Before, if it wasn't annexed by the U.S., right? So, and you have the continuing. The evolution of how tourists are, they're more independent. They want to do unique things. I went to a social media workshop, and they're talking about now people going off the beaten path and taking pictures, selfies. I did this. This is unique, right? And so they want to find different products. And I think we talked about fashion. What is Hawaii? What is aloha? All that kind of stuff is evolving, right? And so I think we attract visitors here. They get to sample products. They get to try things in the Hawaii environment. They're going to take things back to wherever they live in Japan. They can't always come to Hawaii, but you can go to a cafe. You can go to Holland Coffee Company, little plug, but enjoy that little atmosphere, right, kind of thing. And so what we want to do at the trade shows is to facilitate, those companies who are selling well here, let's take it to Japan. And then continue that process. So it's it goes both ways.
Sorry.
Oh, and also just to add to the kind of Japanese affinity for Hawaii, where there can be real business opportunities. I mean, just recently, this past year, Renko, it's a Japanese packaging company, they opened a place in Kapolei. And so basically, if you're a Hawaii manufacturer, the packaging you're using is probably from them. It's like a $40 million investment. They use that as their first point of entry in the U.S. market. They were not on the mainland, they were in Japan, but they wanted to start in the U.S. market and they started in Hawaii. And I think that's because they have a comfort level. There was already a market need here because, I don't know if how people's memory goes back, but Weyerhaeuser used to be do all the packaging in Hawaii, and then they closed down, and then it was all just brought in from the mainland, and there was a distributor here. Some investors here got together, they went out, and they did a deal with Renko, came in, and it was a $40 million investment in Kapolei, manufacturing.
Yeah, so China definitely is growing, but you look at, there's an article I saw that the real estate investment, foreigners, it's still Japanese are still the highest foreign investors and whatnot. So that's never going to go away. We need to take advantage of that and build upon that too. Yeah.
This has been an incredible show where we've got to learn so much from the State Business Development and Support Division. We're done. We could talk forever. We want to talk about loans. We want to talk about, there's so many questions. Where does the hub fit in all this? I mean, we get 1 or 2 or 3 members every single day, so there's a small business need for these things. And we'll just have to have you on again.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so thanks so much for joining us. We love talking about state support for
Thank
small
you.
business, and we appreciate you guys. Come by the hub anytime.
Yes.
We love seeing you guys there. Okay,
do that.
thanks everyone. We look forward to seeing you next time. Aloha.